And hello everyone, all about the gyro. And in my final review of the content that has... I just realized I'm in metric, so let me flip that back out. Let's try this again. And in my final review of the road content,
Its exit's clear.
Here we are. The Brazilian stock car. This is a wild car. 450 brake horsepower, V8 motor. You have what's called extra power. You get 6 uses of that. It gives you an extra 50. And I will tell you, not a lot of aero help
left. 2 minutes
on this car. You got the Chevrolet Cruze, and we're in the Toyota Corolla. And once again, we're out here at Walton. This time, the national layout. And so, this is going to be my first impressions of this car. And the first impressions is this is going to be a challenging car to drive. This is the most popular car in Brazil. Their version of NASCAR. It's based on road courses. And so, I figured I'd give it a drive here and share with you what I think about this car and whether or not you should buy it. So, as mentioned in a previous video, Winton is, and we have Andy Corsa is making another variant in our recordings. As aforementioned in our Aston GT4 video, which may be released before or after this, but in that video, I have said this is a track-specific series, specific surface. Now, here is an example of that. This car is much better suited for circuits like Interlagos. Circuits where the car can stretch its legs out a little bit. This is not necessarily an ideal surface for this car. It has a lot of power. So, read into how I drive this car, keeping in mind that this is not a well-suited circuit for this car. And so here is the information. You have 15-minute heat race, and then you have a 15-minute feature. So, let me show you the setup, and then I'm going to talk a little more about the car. So, it's a rear-wheel drive car. As aforementioned, it's a V8 motor. Basically, it's an old Chevy motor, from what I understand. And here's all the things you can change. And the first thing you'll notice is not a lot. You will not be able to set a lot. This is the baseline sprint setup, and we are running max in the front, min in the rear to keep this car from oversteering. So, that's the first thing you'll notice. The second thing you're going to notice is that brake bias. 67.4%. So there is definitely an emphasis on getting this car slowed down in a stable manner. Almost reminds me a lot of like Formula V, Spec Racer Fords, where you have a lot of front brake bias because of the car configuration. Third thing you're going to notice you cannot change springs, can't change dampers. It is what it is. And this car is a soft car when it comes to looking at corner weights. So the only thing you're going to be able to change is ride height, camber, and toe. And note that the camber is very aggressive in this sprint setup. And it's kind of the beauty of this series is, as I understand it, all the teams were from the same building. The shops are wide open to one another. So there's no mystery. It is very much a spec oriented series. This is the series that Tony Kanaan races in. Also, Richard Zonta, who's a Formula One driver from the past. Jacques Villeneuve is driven in this series. And other superstars of racing has raced these very cars. Now, those who are aware of the channel, I love my rake. This car will not let you do much in the rake. It just won't do it. And the reason, as you see in the graphic, it's got that big old splitter, so it doesn't handle a lot of rake changes because it gets out of compliance. So, what does it drive like? Well, a lot of people have had different ways of describing it. Some people say this is like a heavy Porsche Cup car. And I can see that. I can see how it would be a heavy Porsche Cup car. I tend to think that this is the Formula V on steroids. And once we get into the race, I'll elucidate on this car. It also reminds me a lot of the Spec Racer Ford on steroids. So the first thing about this car that you need to understand is there's no ABS. And as far as I know of, there's no traction control either. So it's just pure horsepower. And the interesting thing is because they use a heat system and a race system, I don't know how victories would be handled, whether it's a double victory system or just like an overall system. Now, for this car, for the first time, I've had the map a push to pass system. So normally where my pit limiter is on the GT1 Wheel of Sim Magic happens to be the letter P.
Minutes.
Happens to be the letter P. It is now my push to pass.
You need to follow the pace
You
car.
get 6 for the entire race. Looks like we may have someone starting from pit lane.
Okay, Dwayne, stay calm, focus.
And you do not get to use push to pass
Green, green, green.
on the first lap. We got Andy. So, once we get going here, I'll show you the in-car adjustments here. And there is a steering wheel, but it's hard to see. That's why you see the dash meter. Full tires. So the first thing is it's really easy to lock up the tires. So I'm going to back this down already. And I think Andy... You can also change the ARB. So the first thing, for those that are aware, you're going to go, oh, supercars. And it has kind of that similarity. Not a lot of technology. That's what you can change.
P4.
Andy's had an adventure.
Okay, Dwayne, the next car is course
You
set.
can catch the car too if you know what you're doing. Do you see how the car gets out of sorts if you're not careful with the braking? So, this car really forces you to be smooth. And now I'm going to get my push to pass loaded up because it's a 5-second delay. And that light just went out, the green light. Now I got 50 more horsepower for about 20 seconds. Okay, so changing the brake bias has definitely helped me. So we're trying to find
Leader
the
has
limit.
just done a 127.8. You've just done a 130.9.
This is my first proper race in this car. So I have not yet sorted out how to drive it fully yet. But I will tell you, the force feedback, I'm running 8.5. I probably need to run this at a 9. So let me go ahead and tweak that. There we go. Just because I'm learning with everybody else how to race it. So you see how I'm a little bit up the visibility?
The gap to Corsa ahead is increasing.
And my understanding is there is a minimum brake bias that this car will run. So short shifting is
27.5. That's a new fastest lap for Corsa.
going to be important.
27.0.
We'll try 64. And like I said, you can catch the car.
10 minutes to go. That's 10 minutes left.
So, you have to be very smooth on power application. Don't even think this has a limited slip diff. Put it that way. Now, let's describe the rear and the front. So, on the brakes, it's actually very subtle. See, I overshot the corner because I missed my braking point by about 10 meters. And so this car is going to force you to be precise. Second here. So it is similar to a supercar in the way you approach it. I think the V8 supercars have a little bit more aero help. This does not have the front downforce that I am used to in a supercar when I drive, the Bathurst 1000, for example. And the other thing is you got to get your braking done before the corner, because as you see right there, it's a great example of
Okay, Dwayne, we've gone out of track
trail
limits.
braking and all that when it goes wrong. When it goes wrong, you are not going to recover it.
P4.
I'll just take my push to pass.
You're halfway home. Got plenty of fuel.
So the way that you turn this car is you almost have to be a little bit lazy with it, because if it's too sharp, you're going to spin the car. Very smooth inputs.
The gap to Corsa ahead is increasing.
See, there's an example right there.
Seconds.
Perfect example
Gone out of track limits.
of-
Keep it between the lines.
you cannot overdrive this car. It punishes you immediately. So here's a little trail braking. And I can feel when I'm trying to get going, the car says, nope, you gotta wait on me, buddy. So the weight sensation is in the front. See, notice, once again, you hear the rev mid-corner, and it says, nope, don't do that. So you have to have very quiet feet.
Fastest lap for Corsa, 126.8.
Very, very quiet. So you got to be smooth on throttle application. And you got to give yourself plenty of braking distance. Plenty of braking distance. You have to be very moderate on the brake pressure. Or what it does is it responds when you're not smooth and moderate.
5 minutes to go, 5 minutes.
Spins you. So now I've learned my lesson.
Corsa is now in the lead.
And Andy is in the lead. So yeah, trail braking, very tricky in this car. So notice I got a little bit spicy there. This is the extra 50 brake horsepower that I have.
That lap was at 130.1.
So the suspension feel. Let's talk about that a little bit. I actually like the suspension feel. It is almost balanced. It's predictable. You have to get turn in correct in this car though, because it will instantly understeer. The bumps and all that, don't feel them. It's actually pleasant. The engine only revs to just over 6,000 RPM. So now, tires are up to temp. Car's starting to slide just a little bit.
The gap in front is now 11 seconds. It's your best lap in this session.
And the way that you release the brake is important. Because if you release it too suddenly, it breaks the car, as in traction. So you have to be very, very smooth.
2 minutes to go, 2 minutes.
So, here's the question. Gyro, do I buy this car? And the answer is going to be, it depends on why you want the car. Now, if you're Brazilian, you're going to buy the car.
Blaine, you've used half your fuel.
You're racing your home series, of course you're going to. for everybody else, the series that I think is going to be very interesting to compare against are the supercars, because you do have American strength of fields. Because of the time zone,
Time was 129.8. The stewards have warned us about track limits. Keep it between the lines. You'll need to slow down if you don't want a penalty.
yes, that's a minor track cut. So, it really depends what your purpose is. My personal view on this car is if you can drive this car well, you're going to drive GT4 very well. Because you'll know how to brake smoothly, which is an important skill.
Just 2 minutes left, 2 minutes to go.
Once the tires get hooked up, the braking is not bad. So it depends. The car itself, it's a fun car.
P4, that's it, we're done. Checkered flag, P4.
But the question becomes, because it is a niche series, are you willing to race it? So yeah, it depends. Take care of yourself, take care of one another. God bless.